As artificial intelligence continues to play an increasing role across the federal government, a critical issue facing IT leaders is how best to ensure the security, privacy, and control of the data and the infrastructure essential for managing AI workloads. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and here to share their perspective on that is Steve Wallace, Chief Technology Officer at the Defense Information Systems Agency. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Juan.
Let me start by asking, first of all, what types of AI use cases are getting the most significant investment support at DISA? And how do you see those investments bringing greater innovation to DISA's mission?
So there's one particular space where we're seeing the biggest benefit, and obviously everyone's quite excited about generative AI. There's a lot of other aspects to AI as well that are getting a lot of attention. But specifically on the generative AI side, we see it more on the security and the analyst side of things, where I think we'll get the biggest bang and the biggest return on the investment. And by that I mean we process, the data sets are exponential that are coming in terms of log data, in terms of threat data, that sort of thing. And we're certainly not going to people our way out of that problem. The analysts are stretched. The pool is not as deep as what anybody would ultimately love it to be. Everyone's competing for analyst time and analyst capability. So if we can have some type of AI sitting side saddle with that analyst, helping them to decompose attacks, understand what's going on, and more quickly help us to respond and thus kick off automations and that sort of thing, while keeping a human in the loop and aware of what is going on. But if we can help them simplify their tasks and the amount of things that are coming at them, that is where I see the biggest bang for the buck right now. We're seeing integration across the whether it be the cost products straight out of the box, or services that we can leverage, that sort of thing. But that's probably the biggest area. Another one would probably be we're starting to look towards service desk integration and how do we best, the analysts that are sitting at the service desk, how do we help them better get answers more quickly to our user base than we have been able to previously.
So when it comes to controlling security and costs, how do you view the pros and cons of managing data in private on-prem service stacks versus government authorized commercial service stacks?
There's certainly a trade-off, and what you see in terms of feature sets and that sort of thing. The commercial environment, we always see we have worked hard to achieve feature parity with what is going on in the commercial world. Contract vehicles like JWCC have it distinctly written in there that we have to have parity with what goes on in the commercial world. So there's certainly some goodness coming out of all of that. When it comes down to the security and the cost, it's definitely something that we have to weigh and not lean on. Even going back to the days of strictly on-prem, there's still some benefits to an on-prem environment, but they're sort of fleeting at this point. So it's how do we, we're working hard to get our heads around kind of what that starts to look like, and balancing that security with the ultimate, cost and the benefit of having something out there in purely a commercial realm. But I think we're getting much better about that as it goes, trying things out in commercial and then bringing them into the government side.
So another issue that agencies, I think, are beginning to really face is managing their computing resources, particularly with the advent of GPUs versus CPUs. And I'd be interested to hear, when you think about managing computing resources internally, how would you characterize DISA's ability right now to essentially manage CPUs versus GPU resources, to really optimize AI-intensive workloads versus, less intensive workloads?
Sure, and this is another space where our relationship with the commercial world and the commercial service providers and their gov cloud environments that they've built out for us at this point brings us a lot of benefit. When you look back at the sort of on-prem deployments where you had a lot of these islands and you would get underutilization, and then we were really just focused on CPU and storage and that sort of thing, but you had these islands that sort of occurred there. And then naturally with the advent of cloud, you had some of that commoditization of that function come together. And we're seeing the same thing with the GPUs. I will tell you that we are in effect competing with the commercial space when it comes to the GPU allocations. There's simply not enough, and you have to provide workload that will keep those GPUs humming in order to so that the commercial folks have the rationale to make the investment in these GovCloud environments. So it is certainly a balancing act. It is the conversations that we are having with them. We can't tell them, hey, we're going to need n number of GPUs right away, and then let them go underutilized. We need to be able to demonstrate the fact that, yep, we can take advantage of them as a department and take advantage of them at scale and continuously. Certainly don't want to see anybody make an investment and then have them sit idle.
It's an interesting and pragmatic point. So as you think going forward, how is the growing impact of AI likely to shape DISA's infrastructure investment strategy going forward?
So the way that we see that is we recently awarded a prototype called DHMC, and that is our strategy going forward for how we're going to shape the compute environment. And what DHMC brings to the table is the ability to manage that hybrid workload, whether it be on-prem, off-prem, allows us to have better integration and of the IT suites across the board. It gives us the ability to have enclaves dedicated for AI and GPU intensive workload, but it also gives us the ability to bring in high performance compute workload and sort of expand the data centers around that. So it's definitely having an impact. And I think we need to be cognizant of how much we can do out in the straight, pure commercial arena and how much has to be done on dedicated GovCloud, whether it be unclassified up through the classified environments. I think we need to be cognizant of where the workload actually needs to exist versus saying it has to be in one particular environment without a good rationale.
And then lastly, and maybe more broadly, what are the biggest issues or gaps that DISA is starting to look into or try to address to take fuller advantage of AI's potential?
Generally, in this space, I've used the word measured around our adoption of AI. And by that, I mean there's so much out there right now. You go to any conference, any sort of event, and all of these vendors are suddenly in the AI space. And the question is, how far are they actually in? How much is marketing versus how much is reality? So what we are working to do is take a measured approach in terms of adoption, looking for where are the greatest areas that it will pay off for us and the department, where are the best bets to make in terms of that investment, and sort of having to figure out where the reality is and where the marketing is. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues facing the industry right now is we get very excited about a lot of these concepts, and they certainly have value, but it's separating the wheat from the chaff, if you will, and getting after the good components there. So for us, as I mentioned before, it's how do we have the help the analysts out and sit side saddle with the analysts and have the AI help them? How are we taking advantage of the commercial off-the-shelf products, the COTS products, as vendors are integrating AI functions into that? Are we taking the best advantage of those features and functions so that we're not chasing something else? Meanwhile, we've already got a working capability already in our backyard that maybe we're not leveraging well enough. So there's that mix of the COTS versus development capability.
Well, Steve Wallace, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to join us and share your perspective on the way DISA is looking at AI infrastructure and its strategy for going forward. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks.